Let's talk about the room you're in right now. I mean, really look at it. The chair you're sitting on, the desk that's holding your screen, they all have a secret story. A story that's all about energy and chemicals in global supply chains. And for the very first time, the companies that make them are being asked to tell it.
Okay, let's just dive right in. Take a second and look around you. Your desk, your chair, maybe the floorboards under your feet. Have you ever really, truly stopped to think about how all of that stuff actually got to you? To figure that out, we've got to follow two different journeys. First, we'll start with the one you can kind of see, the physical path, from a factory floor all the way to your front door.
So the physical path is usually pretty straightforward. You've got a manufacturer who makes the product, let's say it's a set of kitchen cabinets. They sell it to a distributor, who then gets it out to a retail store or maybe an independent dealer. And from there, finally, it makes its way to you. That's the classic way it's done. But see, that simple path from the factory to your house, that's only half the picture. The other half is the story of what happens before it's even built. Like, what resources were used to make it? What was the real environmental cost? This is the hidden story, and it's the one that investors and customers are starting to demand to see.
And to uncover that hidden story, you need a completely new kind of accounting. A totally new way for companies to be transparent about how they actually operate.
And this is how they're doing it. There's this framework called the SASB standards. That's SASB. And it's basically creating a whole new set of rules. You can think of it as, mandatory truth-telling for companies about their environmental and social impact, so that investors, and really all of us, can see what's actually going on behind the curtain.
So, what does that actually mean? It means companies now have to report on sustainability issues that could genuinely hurt their bottom line. The best way to think about it is like a nutrition label, but for a huge corporation. Instead of calories and fat, it's showing you their energy use, their chemical risks, all of it. It's standardized, it's comparable, and it kind of reveals everything.
Now, what's really fascinating here is that these standards are different for every industry. And for building products and furniture, they zoom in on 4 key sustainability topics that have a real, measurable financial impact. And for the building industry, it really all boils down to these 4 critical things: how they manage their energy, the chemicals they put into their products, the product's entire life cycle, from cradle to grave, and of course, where they get their wood. So let's break each one down.
All right, first up, energy management. Just try to picture these massive factories. The heat, the heavy machinery it takes to pump out flooring or furniture. It is an incredibly energy-hungry business, and every single bit of that energy is a direct cost on their balance sheet.
So now, companies have to report their total energy consumption in this standard unit called gigajoules, which is really just a way to measure absolutely massive amounts of energy. And they have to show how much of that comes from the grid versus how much comes from renewables. This gives investors a super clear picture of the company's energy diet and just how vulnerable they might be to rising energy prices.
Next, let's talk about chemicals in products. This is all about the invisible ingredients, things like volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, that you often find in the paints, the finishes, and the glues that are used to make all this stuff.
And managing these chemicals, it's not just about safety, it's just smart business. Poor chemical management can lead to huge regulatory fines and some serious damage to your reputation. Plus, there is a massive and growing demand for safer products, especially as green building certifications like LEED become the standard. It's really all about meeting what your customers expect and protecting your brand.
Okay, topic number 3 is the really big picture one, the product life cycle. Here, we're looking at the total environmental footprint of a product, from the very moment its raw materials are pulled out of the ground to the day it gets thrown away.
And this slide really shows the huge shift that's happening. The old way of doing things was totally linear. You take resources, you make a product, and then you just throw it in a landfill. Waste. The new sustainable model that companies are being pushed towards is circular. It's all about sustainable sourcing, efficient manufacturing, designing for a long life, and then, and this is the key part, finding ways to recover, reuse, and recycle those materials at the very end. And that brings us to our final key topic, which is a gigantic one for this industry, the wood supply chain.
Since wood is basically the lifeblood of this entire industry, investors really want to know, where is it coming from? This standard forces companies to report exactly what percentage of their wood is certified as sustainable by groups like the Forest Stewardship Council, or FSC, versus how much comes from, who knows where. And this is absolutely critical for avoiding the risks of things like illegal logging and deforestation.
Okay, so we've looked at the 4 big topics. But let's connect the dots here. Why does this kind of standardized reporting actually matter in the real world?
It all comes down to this. This isn't just about being green for the sake of it. The whole point of these standards is to get companies to disclose information on risks and opportunities that could actually affect their cash flow, their access to loans, or their cost of capital. In other words, this is about money. It's about financial health and long-term stability.
So, the bottom line is pretty clear. This level of transparency gives investors a heads up about hidden risks, it protects a company's brand from scandals over things like illegal logging, and it actually pushes companies to innovate and create more efficient and better products.
Which of course leads us to the big question, what does all of this mean for our future? Are we actually heading toward a more sustainable world because of this?
Ultimately, the standard just gives us the information. The real question is for us. Will knowing more about this hidden story, the energy, the chemicals, the life cycle, the sourcing, will that change the way we choose to build our world? That's definitely something to think about.